Hey guys, welcome to PB Garage. As you can see here, I've got a Mk5 GTI and I've got a junkyard wiring harness for my hatch here. Think you can figure out where this is going? All right, now just before we get started, the car came to me already partially disassembled like this, which made my life a little bit easier. But if you've got a car with a hatch that won't open, like this one didn't when I got it, what you can do is get into the back of the car through your back seats here. And then if you come to your hatch, you can pop the little cover off the middle here and that'll give you access. You can peek in and just through that little hole there, there's a little white plastic lever. You can reach in there with the end of a screwdriver, unlatch that, and it should release the hatch so you can get it open and start working on it. Now to get this skin off the hatch here, you've got a couple of Torx bolts down in each handle pocket here. So there's just inside there's a bolt on either side, and I believe they're gonna be a Torx T25 or T30, something like that. And then basically you'll just be pulling it off, and it's got these little spring clips kind of everywhere. So there's a good view of where they are. Basically, you can just get in with your fingers, work your way around, and they'll unclip from these little slots. So you can just pull that out after you've taken those two bolts in the handles out, and that whole panel should just come right off. Now, the reason this was all apart is that the car was having some bulb out issues with the lights on the back here that I guess people were trying to fix and replacing bulbs and not fixing the problem. But then eventually the latch stopped working, or was at least intermittent, and the wiper doesn't work. There's a bunch of issues here, so it looked like somebody was trying to shotgun parts at it until it fixed itself, but they weren't successful. Ultimately, the issue wasn't even in any of the hatch here. The issue that I found was right here in that wiring harness that goes to the body. Now, having a look at that guy, you can see a lot of the wires are broken, coming apart. So if you get really lucky and you start having some issues with some of the stuff in your hatch, and you get in here, you get that wiring harness apart, you might be able to tell which wire goes to which and just solder in a splice and tackle it in that way. But in my case, there's way too much going on here. You know, I'm worried about connecting wires to other ends that aren't the correct wires and stuff like that. And so we're just gonna go ahead and replace that whole harness. Now I've got a junkyard harness here that I took out, and I actually, when I took it out, thought it was in good shape, but when I got it home and started to pull the insulation off the wires, I noticed that it was having some issues as well. So I actually got in there and I've replaced a bunch of those wires. I've taped it back up again, but a lot of these wires are cut, spliced in new sections, soldered in on both sides, sealed with heat shrink, and then taped up. And I'm gonna use this harness to replace the one that's on the car right now, because at least with that harness, when I got it apart, I could tell which wires went to which, not like this, where I've got kind of wires all over the place. So now the fun part, we've got to take this whole wiring harness out, which there's harness in the hatch here, obviously, which that part of it is not too bad. But the harness goes into the body here, and then behind this panel, there's 3 plugs that we've got to get to. And unfortunately, to get that panel off, we have to remove the seats, the seat backs, the trim here, this trim as well, this trim, and that allows us to get at the hardware to be able to remove that panel and finally get at those plugs. Now the other thing we need to do is we do need to take off this other plastic trim that's around the edge of the window so that we can get at the wires that go up for the third brake light. And I think there's the wires for the heater, the rear glass heater there as well. So this trim actually comes off much the same way. It has those spring clips, and you just want to be careful where you're getting at it. But basically, you're just pulling it out as well. Like that. And you can see here, you've got that same kind of style of spring clips all the way around here. Now something I just want to mention real quick here before I get started is the difference in the third brake light between the GTI and like rabbits. So on the GTI, you can see you have this third brake light that kind of hangs down a little bit. It's got a little bit of a plastic extra duck bill here on the back. And I know some guys change these out for even bigger ones. The third brake light here, pain in the ass to get out, but even worse is the rabbits. So if we have a look at the rabbit here, you can see that this third brake light's kind of recessed, and this is actually metal on the rabbits. The GTIs have this metal underneath as well, but they have that plastic piece that comes up from it a little bit. And when I took the wiring harness that I have out of the junkyard, I actually had to remove that third brake light, and I totally destroyed it trying to get it out of there, and it tore up the paint a little bit around the outside as well because it's held in with like these little spring clips and you got to work it out, but it's a real pain. And if we look at the GTI here, just because I've got it open, you can see that on the back there's really no way to get at it to kind of push that third brake light out from the inside. So what I'm going to do to save myself a little bit of aggravation, and just to make sure that I don't mess up that third brake light on this car, is I'm actually going to come in, I'm going to take this plastic guard off and take this out, but I'm going to cut that wire about halfway up that guard after I remove the tape. And then I'm going to take my harness here, my extra harness, and I'm going to do the same for it. So I'll cut that wire about halfway up that plastic piece there, and then I'm going to solder the harness part to the little pigtail that's already on the car. That way I don't have to remove that third brake light and risk damaging anything there. So I'll just do a little splice here, make my life a lot easier. Now this little piece of plastic has these two little pins. So we're just gonna pull those guys out. And now I'm just gonna cut the tape that's holding the wire to that plastic little guard there. So that's good for that, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut the wire a little ways back. Now, why did I go to that extra trouble instead of just cutting it here? Well, I don't want to inadvertently lose my wire back into the body here. Just wanna make sure I have lots to work with. So I'm just gonna give it a little snip closer to the end there. All right, so one thing to keep in mind as we're taking wires out here is there's actually two harnesses in the tailgate. The one we're working on, the one we're interested in, is on the left-hand side of the car. And there's also one on the right-hand side that has its own accordion down at the base of the hatch here. So what we wanna do, because it does connect to the other harness and there's a little bit of crossover, we just wanna identify which is which. Now, if we look at this yellow and black leads that come up, I'm gonna say above, because that's the way the tailgate is right now. In the car, it would actually be under. It's got a ground wire that connects up here. So this one is a crossover between the two harnesses. So when we come in with our new harness, we're gonna plug into that guy. Now that black wire goes to this plug, which is for the antenna. I'll show you guys that one. So this plug here is for the antenna. That one we can leave. We don't need to unhook it at all. This is where that ground was here. And this is our left-handed harness. And then the other wire that's coming from that bundle is not actually a wire, it's a hose, and it goes for the rear window squirter, and it's right here on the wiper motor. So we don't have to worry about that guy. We can leave it in as well, but we will need to undo this clip to take this wire off to our left-handed harness. So with that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go around and start unplugging all my pieces. I've already got the one unplugged here from that right-handed harness, and like I say, we get to leave that guy, but everything else is gonna come out. So we've got our connector for our hatch handle there. And then I'm gonna come in with my pick and undo that little plastic guard there. This is my wire for my reverse light. So we're gonna unplug that guy. Now this guy needs to slide in sort of underneath our wiper motor here, and it's got these two plastic little clips, so hopefully you can undo those without too much drama. I've got a trim tool here just to kind of help with that. Now if that's giving you a hard time, you can remove that wiper motor, but chances are the nut that's holding the wiper arm on the outside of the car is not in great shape, so I'm gonna try and get away with doing this without moving that wiper motor. So there, I've got this one out. There's one up here that I managed to get out, but there is one hiding under the motor here, and it's pretty tough to get at. So that wasn't so bad. Actually, with two trim tools, one on either side, there is enough room under here that I was able to get to it. So this wire is now loose, which is my reverse light. And I've got my plug for my wiper motor. And then I should be able to sneak that whole thing out. There we go, not too bad after all. Undo this clip to get this harness out. And another one of those plastic clips into the body. We've got our wire here for our hatch. We've got our other reverse light connector. And you can see right here where that started out yellow, went into this little plug which goes to the rear defroster. We could just unplug that guy. And then all we should have left is our wire here, which is the power that's going to our hatch. So we should be able to just unplug that guy and undo those plastic clips from the body. And if I'm not mistaken, that should be all of our connections. All right, so now, should be pretty easy. All I have to do is feed these guys all through my hole here in the hatch. The one that might be a little bit difficult is this guy here that's up the top, only because it's got to pass behind quite a bit of stuff in there. All right, there we go. So that's the easy part. All this stuff out of the hatch. We're down to our accordion here. And before I tackle the car side of things, I'm actually gonna take my replacement harness, feed it up through here, get everything all connected, splice these wires together, and that way I have everything done up in here while I still remember where everything was routed. Then we're gonna tackle the inside of the car. All right, so now what we've got to do is we've got to get into this part of the car to get access to those plugs on the inside. Now, ultimately what we need to do is we need to pull this panel off, or at least get it out enough that we can get in behind it and unplug and plug in those plugs for the new wiring harness. Now, I've never done this on a 2-door GTI before. I've only done it on 4-door ones. And on the 4 doors, the way you get into it, so you pull the bench of the seat, so the bottom part of that seat, by pulling it up at the front, it releases 2 clips. Pull that seat bench out, and then you undo a bolt that's like a T30 Torx right at the bottom of this bolster here, and you pull that whole bolster out, because on the 4-door cars, this is one of your rear doors, so that opens up. Like I say, you take this bolster off, and that gives you access to the bolts that you need to remove this piece, which lets you get at this, and it kind of goes in that sequence. On the 2-door, it's a little bit different because this panel's all one piece right up here to your front door. I do see a little, what looks like an access hatch there. So we're gonna try and pop that guy off. Hopefully that's gonna let me get into the bolts that I need to get at to remove this panel. Lets me get into there. So we'll give that a try. So I've got my mechanics pick here. I'm just gonna try and get in, pull that panel off just like that. Now, if we look at this little trim panel, you can see it's got, on the rounded edge here, it's got like little hooks. And at the back, it's just got little like locking tabs. So it definitely comes out at the back first and then pull it out this way. Now that that cover's out of the way, you can see I've actually got 2 bolts in here. So I've got one near the surface here and one a little bit deeper in. Hard to spot in there. I think these are both Torx 30. So we're gonna take those out with a T30 and hopefully that'll let me get this trim panel off. And by T30, I meant, of course, T25. Now, I really don't want to drop that bolt in there, so I've got the magnet here just as a backup. We've got another T25 here at the back. You can see the trim on the bottom of the tailgate here is already off. Somebody's already taken that off. I don't even know if I have it to put it back on, but they're just these little spring clips as far as I know. So you just pull that guy off. And then I wonder if that's gonna be enough. Now I think with those 3 bolts out, because I can see there's one like plug in there, feels like there's another one over here somewhere, but I think this is where I either break the car or I get the job done. That guy, and then just gotta angle this one out. Hopefully, something's holding it right there. There we go. So there you go, if you have a look. See, there's these 2 plastic clips here, and there was a 3rd one right here, but it stayed in the car. And those plugs should be right in there. So I think my next step is I'm gonna have to take this guy off because I don't think I can get in there. All right, so don't mind this headliner, but there's a plastic trim along the back here, and I think it's just held in with those compression clips. So I think, yeah, it should just come out. That was easy enough. And then we've got one 10 mil plastic nut here. I think there's a bolt under the airbag tag. So if we get in here, just pop that cover off. That didn't work out the way I wanted. Okay. So with that guy out, there is a T25, I think, down in the bottom of there. Pull this guy off. That guy's gonna be tough to get at, but actually, you know what? No, I should have used this guy earlier. I have these little L-handled ones, but they have a little magnet on the tip. So hopefully if I can get in here and get on that bolt. That's lucky. I was able to pull it out. Pull this guy up at the back. Ooh. There we go. Okay, so just to recap, this is where that plastic 10 mil nut was. In here we had that T25 bolt. This was held in by that weather stripping, so I peeled the weather stripping away, get that part out, pulled this tab up and out, and then there's a second, there's one of those little spring tabs here, pull that guy up and out, and then here, that's the little thing that hung me up just at the end. The plastic trim here has a tab that was just going through that little slot there, so I just pulled that guy out, the tab came out, pulled this guy, and there were a couple of little compression guys on the back. You can see 1, 2, and then there's a 3rd one here that stayed in the car, so it's right there. But you can see like right there, and I think the other one was right up here. So that tells you where you need to pull. You know, you need to unlatch there, there, and there. Pull that tab out, lift that tab, lift this tab, and then the whole thing comes out. And we can see right here, there's our plugs. So mission accomplished. Now all I have to do, undo these plugs here. Yep. Little tab on the top there, just press that guy in. And there we go. Maybe you don't even need to press that guy. And there's this. I'll pull this guy out. And then right here, I've already got that grommet out. Pulled that guy, and we can pass it through the hole in the car. Slide our plugs through. Luckily, same plugs, 2-door and 4-door. So I can just push these guys through that hole. This is the replacement harness, by the way. I'm just gonna try and make sure that this isn't contorted weird. Plug these guys back in. All right, well, that's pretty much it, guys. I've got my plugs plugged back in. I still need to wire up my 3rd brake light here Just going to splice that into the harness and then move my wiring through that rubber accordion a little bit. Make sure the accordion is into the chassis and into the hatch properly so I don't get any water leaks. And then reassemble everything the way I took it apart. Pretty straightforward from this point on. And that's about it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it's useful for you. Please like and subscribe, or even leave a comment. You know, all that stuff really helps us out. And we'll see you in the next one. All right, have a good one.